It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Bill Frei. Thank you so much for stopping by the house. Sure. Bill is a fourth-year dental student at A.T. Still University's Missouri School of Dentistry and Oral Health in St. Louis, Missouri, and will graduate in May 19th. Bill is a native of the great state of Idaho and graduated with a degree in exercise science and business management from Brigham Young University. He and his wife Morgan are the proud parents of 2-year-old boy-girl twins and are expecting their third child in June. That is amazing. Bill is a recipient of the Army's Health Profession Scholarship and following graduation will attend Basic Officer Leadership course in San Antonio for 6 weeks before completing a 1-year AEGD at Joint Base Lewis McChord in Tacoma, Washington. Bill is passionate about his family, the Utah Jazz, and dentistry. Bill considers it just a huge honor to come in over to my home today and let me podcast interview him. So Bill, congratulations. You graduate from dental school in a month. Are you excited?
I'm ecstatic. Yeah, it's very excited.
Now, my friends up the street at AT Still, I assume you're LDS if you had 3 kids in dental school.
You caught me.
I caught you. my friends from AT Still, if they come out of dental school at AT Still married with 1, 2, or 3 kids, they're usually $400,000 to $500,000 in debt. By having the Army scholarship, were you significantly less positioned than that?
Oh, significantly, yeah. So you can get a 4-year scholarship, which would leave you with no debt because they pay for all of your school. I paid for my first year of school and then received a 3-year scholarship. And then, because I have a family and there were some medical expenses here and there, we took out a few small loans. But my classmates are graduating with about $480,000 of student debt.
Just your average classmate?
Yeah. Yeah,
average.
And that's not including their undergraduate debt. That's just dental school.
Wow, that's 480?
480, yep. And so I'm much lower with that. With the first year and a few, loans here and there, I'm about 180. So much more manageable.
Yeah. And so your class size is 42.
It's 42. Yeah, it's a newer school, so I think they had to keep the class size low until they graduated the first class. And I've actually got an email a couple weeks ago. They're expanding it starting next year to like 62 or 61.
And how large is AT Still here in Mesa?
I think it's like it's around like 70 maybe.
70?
Yeah.
And you know what Midwestern is?
I don't know what Midwestern
Ryan,
is.
do we know what Midwestern's class size is in Glendale?
170, 141 and 76 was ATSU.
So it's 141?
Yeah, 141.
Oh, is it that high?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, big.
Wow, I thought it was smaller than that.
So what class were you a graduate of this new school?
I'm the second class.
The second class?
Which was perfect because the first class, they had to work all the kinks out. They went through a lot, to be honest. I actually have a lot of respect for them because the school hadn't quite figured a lot of things out. They had to put up with a lot of stuff. So a lot of those kinks were worked out when we went through, but it was also kind of like they hadn't figured everything out, so we were able to get by without doing some things. So they kind of tightened things up after our class and said, you got to take these exams, you got to increase the requirements. So I've enjoyed my experience. It's been awesome.
Well, 42, that's intimate. I figure you must be intimate with every person in the class.
Yeah, I know everyone and probably too much about everyone in my class as well.
Well, I would rather be in a new school's first, second, or third class than what I witnessed when I was in dental school. That was when dental schools were contracting. They closed down Emory and Georgetown and Northwestern. And there were all these people that were freshmen, sophomore, junior, senior, and all of a sudden their school closes.
Yeah. There was 2 schools in St. Louis, Washington University and St. Louis University. Both closed down. There wasn't a school in St. Louis for a long time until our school.
Yeah.
So.
And they were like, oh my God, I'm a junior in dental school. I got 1 year to go and my dental school's gone. And they were at the mercy of deans just saying, just squeeze into a class.
Yeah,
and
that'd be crazy.
Man, that'd be really traumatic. Yeah. So I love the variety show nature of Dentistry Uncensored where, we've done 25 on just endodontists or periodontists or pedodontists or practice or whatever. I love, I'm 30 years down the road than you. I love to hear the other end of the spectrum. I know older dentists listen to the show, like to know are you technically a millennial?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
They love to know how millennials are thinking, what you thought of your dental school, what your plans are. I mean, the older guys hear things like, everybody in the dental school just wants to work for a DSO. They don't want to own their own business. are very intimate with 42 people. How many of those 42 people, what percent just want to work for Heartland, Aspen, and do an 8 to 5 at a DSO and have a family? And what percent do you think have the entrepreneur business hat on and want to own their own business?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for my school, I would say for those that want to go into corporate, probably half. And then of that remaining half, there's probably about half of those, so 25% total that are planning on going into community health centers because they offer loan repayment options.
So half wants to be an employee.
Yes.
And so a quarter, so half of that half would be a quarter wants to do public health.
Yep, public health, community health centers.
Because of student loan repayment.
Exactly.
And then the other quarter wants to do DSO?
Private practice.
Private.
Yeah, I would say private practice. So half of the class DSO, corporate, yeah, and then 25% public health, and then the other 25% private practice.
Okay, so for the private practice boys and girls, do you have any hardcore, what is the student loan benefit payback in DSO? I mean, if this is such an amazing benefit that a quarter of your class went to, like what are the terms? Do they just take over your payments while you work for them? Is it
for DSO? You said?
No, for public health.
Oh, public health. It sounds to me like there's different options depending on who you work with, and it's somewhat negotiable as well. So if you're going to an area of like great need, rural Missouri, rural Wisconsin, which is where some of my classmates are going, they can somewhat negotiate as far as what their salary is going to be, and then also what that community health center can offer them as far as loan repayment. So I don't know honestly a lot of the specific numbers. I just know that it varies.
Well, what do you think the range is?
As far as what they're getting offered?
Yeah, for public health.
I honestly couldn't even give you a guess because I've never looked into it myself because I just knew it wasn't an option for me.
Well, if you ever look into that or find anything, I think you post it because there's a lot of guys that are private practice in a rural town of 5,000 out in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, North Dakota, South Dakota, and if they start hearing, well, this is the base salary. And this is the student loan benefit. A lot of dentists have said, well, got it. That's all it takes.
Yeah, that's all I got to offer.
I'll do that. Yeah. So when you say public health, is it mostly Indian Health Service or
no, I have one classmate out of the 42 that's doing Indian Health Service. She's going back to Oklahoma, where she's from.
Is she Indian?
She's not. No. Well, I mean, I think she actually has some Indian heritage, like further back. But if you were looking, she's a white female. She doesn't look Indian at all, but her family's from Oklahoma, and I think she has some kind of ties with, the Indian reservation and someone in her family being Indian. But so she's doing Indian services, and then, like I said, the other ones are going into either rural Missouri, rural Kansas, Wisconsin, to the community health centers around there. So
I'm going to show you a map. I think. I love map porn. I do. I think you can, a lot of things that people argue about and disagree with that. I just posted this day. This is a picture. Ryan, would you be able to throw this picture up on the YouTube channel that I'm talking about right now? So here's a map I posted the other day. Here's a map of all the American Indians and Alaska Natives in the United States according to the U.S. Census. And you're talking about she's going to Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. See how huge, how much reservation there is in that area. And then we're out here in Arizona, where Arizona, New Mexico, huge. Mm-hmm. But what do you notice where did the Europeans land?
On the East Coast.
And where are there no Indian reservations?
On the East Coast.
And so why would that be?
Because they drove them all out?
Yeah, when the British and the early colonized were Portuguese and French. The Portuguese kind of went to South America, and the Spanish kind of went to Central, Mexico, wherever they speak Spanish, obviously. And the British went to United States, Canada, Australia, but they were extremely hard on the indigenous people.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
And it is just, it was a brutal. I mean, they think there were 20 million American Indians when they got here.
It's insane.
And 19 million of them died.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say it was all smallpox. No, it wasn't all smallpox.
No,
it was
I'm sure
they drove them off their land. And then why are all the reservations west of the Mississippi? Because they thought there was nothing out there. It had no value.
Sure, before the Louisiana Purchase and all that.
Yeah, so they just shut them out there. But this map shows the brutal annihilation of the American Indian.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, crazy history. But if you can find a range of those offers, I wish you'd post on Dental Town. I would go under looking for an associate. So we have 50 columns and under associate, looking for associates, because one problem I have with the deans and with Pew Research is Pew's always saying, you know, they got to do all these things like dental therapist. And the reason I'm against dental therapists or the reason it's not even on my radar is because the problem is, even when you're a dentist, you need 100 hours of continuing education a year, and it takes 5 or 10 years to get good. So in my walnut brain, giving a patient someone with even less training is completely the wrong direction. But they always come back with valid points saying, well, you know, there's no people in these rules. And that's because the deans only accept people if they have a 4.0 in algebra and trig and geometry. And when I asked that if that girl is an American Indian, you know, it was Jack Dillenberg who set my mind straight 10 years ago here at AT Still. He said, the reason, you know, he says, if anybody applies to dental school from the Navajo Indian Reservation, I'm accepting him. The Navajos need a Navajo Indian to go back to their reservation. They don't need some guy that got an A in calculus and geometry and trig in Phoenix and then goes and works for Indian Public Health Service for 2 years, then leaves. So I think Pew is very misguided in the fact that if they have all this money and they have all this natural resources and they're very concerned about all these underserved areas, then you need to go put downward pressures on these U.S. News and World Report listings of all the universities bragging about their incoming class GPA and how well they did on DATs. That doesn't serve the community well. And I think, as extremist as this sounds, I think for the next 10 years, if every single dental medical and it's the same with engineers. When I go to these mines here in Arizona and Utah, and I drive some of these mines, and I stop by, and I love seeing stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, me and Eric were looking at a mine where the wheels on these trucks were like the size of a house.
Yeah,
I just think that's cool shit.
Yeah.
And when you talk to those guys, I say, what is your biggest problem? And they say the same thing. You know how hard it is to hire a civil engineer? You know how hard it is to get a mechanical engineer? We're out in the middle of, well, if ASU will only accept you to mechanical engineering school if you have a perfect scores in math and trig and geometry. But these public schools have weighted GPA and not the needs of the rural. And the rural pays half the taxes in America. And if for the next 10 years you only accepted engineers and dentists and physicians and lawyers from towns of 5,000 or less, guess what?
Yeah.
And then when you go into a lot of these small towns and you say, well, why did they close down the factory? One of the first things they say is, I can't attract talent.
Yeah.
Do you remember that computer company that looked like a dairy cow, and it was in South Dakota?
Gateway, right?
Gateway.
Yeah.
And they still, and all the classical people say the problem with Gateway was that they should have moved to a larger city earlier. They couldn't attract the talent. And then by the time...
Where were they, you said?
I think they were in South Dakota.
Oh.
And by the time they moved to San Diego, Dell had already beat them at their own game. Pizza Hut. I was born in Wichita, Kansas, home of Pizza Hut. For a pizza, it was so hard on him, but he had to move it to Dallas. And again, it's because all the talent is on this. These universities are not serving the people.
I think the schools feel like they're increasing access to care because they're opening more schools or accepting more students. But like you said, the type of students that they're bringing in, they're not returning to those rural areas, so they're just oversaturating. The markets are already saturated. There's
no such thing as good food. It's whatever you're sticking in your kid's mouth. So when you go to India, mom's putting a lot of curry in your mouth, not salt and pepper. So you think all those Indian dishes are best. You go to China, all this seafood and squid. I mean, so there's no such, so you can't raise a kid in Scottsdale and he just grows up in Scottsdale and then say, hey, how would you like to live in a town of 5,000? Because the kid that grows up in a town of 5,000, he got to go out his front door and shoot a .410 shotgun and ride mini bikes and go-karts, and he loves that world.
Yeah.
And he wants that world for his babies. And when he drives through Scottsdale and he realizes, you can't even shoot a gun out in the street. You can't even ride a motorcycle to the gas station. Yeah. I mean, when I grew up in Kansas, I mean, we had Honda 50s before 6th grade, and we'd go 3-4 miles down street. I mean, and
I see that with my own class even, and maybe it is a little bit of the influence of Jack Dillenberg because we are sisters with sister school with ATSU. I have classmates from Chicago who come from wealthy families, and that's where they're going back. Yeah. And I have a classmate from Keokuk, Iowa, who's a rural town, and when we moved from Kirksville to St. Louis for school, he didn't like St. Louis. It was too big of a city for him. He plans on going back to Keokuk, Iowa. Right. That's where he wants to go. So.
And the rural areas, this is infrastructure is everything. Before there were, if a town doesn't have an interstate and cable and internet and all that, so you can't have it. And I still think the number one problem with all this rural demise is accepting kids from the urbans based on GPAs. Yeah. And it's something that it's so easy to fix. And these dental schools, it's crazy. But you talk about not letting dental school get in the way of your education. Yeah. What does that mean?
I can't take credit for that line. I don't remember where I heard it, but I've loved that line, not letting dental school get in the way of education, because in school they teach us the basics of dentistry. A lot of stuff they teach us we don't even need to know. We're not going to use it in practice. And so I don't know when I really started, but realized that a lot of the stuff that I felt like was going to make me successful in dentistry and in business, clinically and in business, I was going to have to learn on my own. And so whether that's through Dental Town, or that's through going to conferences like I'm at this weekend, I've just kind of made it a point to not count on the education I'm getting in dental school to give me the education I need to be successful. Because I think if you just took the education you were given in dental school, and they offer a class here or there about practice management, but it's so insufficient. But if you just took that education and then went into private practice, man, you're going to be so far behind and stressed. And so I think it's important for pre-dental students, for young dental students to know that you have to take initiative and really on your own go out and seek out, listen to the podcast, get on Dental Town, go to the conferences. They all offer student discounts. It might be a couple $100, but the return on investment is huge on that. So that's just something I'm kind of passionate about, is not letting dental school get in the way of your education.
Yeah, I mean, think of the 8 years to be a dentist, and I've been out 30 years. Do I use math, calculus, geometry, trig, physics? I mean, you're right. And then when you get out of school, and all my classmates of '87 graduated, and the ones that opened up their own practice, a week later they need to make payroll. You think they would have maybe covered
that's crazy.
Payroll? So I had to get A's in geometry and calculus and physics, but you couldn't be bothered by teaching me how to make payroll. Or back then, before I graduated before computers, really no pegboard system training, no payroll. Yeah. You couldn't even give me the payroll chart so I knew the deductions per kid. You know what I mean? I mean, just absolutely. And the ones who do the best, and this is in every occupation, about 25% of people go into family occupations. I mean, even names like Smith they were blacksmith.
Sure.
Taylor were tailors. And so when you go around the world, like in Kansas, if you were graduating from high school and you went into wheat farming, 3 guesses what his dad did. I mean, you just can't graduate from high school, never seen a wheat farm, and decide you're going to be a wheat farmer. Yep. And the thought of graduating from high school and saying, I'm going to go buy a square mile, 640 acres, and build a ranch and buy a combine. And that's just not how it works. Usually, your dad's a wheat farmer, and your grandma and grandpa are going to give it to you when they die. And if they have 2 siblings, they cut the farm in half.
Sure.
And then hopefully the other sibling will want to go be a dentist or a lawyer, and you can buy him out or something. But so all around the world, families go into this. And those are the ones that have a huge advantage because they grew up in a dental office and they saw reality. Where it gets scary is when I'm going to start my own practice. Your dad and mom weren't dentists. Your mom stayed home, and your dad worked at a factory or worked for UPS, and your dental school didn't teach you anything.
Yeah.
And you know what you know, and you have this false confidence.
Oh yeah.
Because you don't know what you don't know.
And I think it's the thing that's scary to me too is that I see it in my classmates. I see it in other students that there's this assumption that you become a dentist, you make good money, and with the amount of debt that they're coming out with now, like that's scary because they don't have all that. They don't have the business background, and like you said, they're not even skilled enough clinically to be successful right when you graduate. And so it's a big reality check for a lot of people, I think, as soon as they graduate, that you might make some money, but so much of that's going back to your student loans, and then you've got the headache of running a business. It's just kind of a recipe for disaster. So.
Yeah. So now, were you aware in dental school that when you're a dental student that all the continuing education on Dentaltown is free?
Yeah, I've been taking advantage of some of it. So.
Do most of the classmates know about that?
Nope.
Yeah,
No.
Spread the word on that, man. We have 450 courses. I think they're some of the greatest courses, period. And they're all ADA approved, AEGD approved. We take it more serious than a heart attack, and we make that free for all dental students.
Yeah, it's awesome. A couple weeks ago, I think I was watching one of Corey Glenn's C's that he put about composites, and it's all free. It's all there. So I'm kind of sad that it's not going to be free here in a little bit, but it's great.
And it's also if you start following the science of learning, you see the 8 to 5 Monday through Friday education system for grammar schools all wrong. I mean, they're saying that these little kids, they can't even start coding long-term memory till 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then when they can only listen to a teacher and focus at the maximum 15 minutes, and the average is probably 7.5. So going to a seminar all day from 8 to 5 to listen about a root canal, you have no idea how many hours you're dreaming about fishing out in Cabo and what you're going to do tonight, and you're going to stop, and you're texting and you're on Facebook and all this crazy stuff. And what I like about online CE, it's 1 hour, and you're an adult doctor of dental surgery, and about an hour is all your walnut brain can do to take that in. And then you don't have to take notes or anything because it's all there. So if you ever wanted something, you could just pull it back up. But I think the human mind, an hour of concentration is pretty much max.
Oh yeah, I agree.
And I remember Oliver Stone. I remember one time, there's only 4 or 5 guys who have made more than 50 or 60 movies in their lifetime. I mean, that's a very rare club, and Oliver Stone's one of them. And I remember one time he was getting grilled because during JFK and Watergate, he had this one character, and he did 2 things that everyone knew was 2 different people. He said, dude, I got 110 minutes max. You want me to introduce a whole new character for this one thing? He goes, in the intern, and they said, well, why does it have to be 110 minutes? Why don't you do it right? And he says, you can't hold their attention for more than 110 minutes. And that's 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And we try to make our online C courses 1 hour, this podcast an hour. I mean, so you're a human being, and you have to know your limitations. And within 2 hours, you're hungry. You got to go to the bathroom. You're wondering if Morgan's needs you to call her, or you know what I mean. So you're getting all your mind's just playing all kinds of tricks on you. Any ideas of how to get that dental CE is free to your dental students out of? I mean, do you guys got an email or a message board or anything?
I mean, we have a quick class Facebook page.
Yeah, I really appreciate if you post that because some of those courses we're so proud of. That endo one is 19 hours long. It cost $1 million and 5 years to make, and my endodontist friends looked at that and said, son of a gun, you took the whole world of endo, and this endodontist from California got it in one course. And as great as your endodontic instructor would be, when he would or she would prepare for class, She never spent 5 years to make 19 one-hour lectures.
Yeah.
And the video and the taping and I mean, it's just, so I mean, that's something where they could watch that one class before they graduate.
Yeah.
And literally just, like, how many endos will you have done when you graduate?
Total, I think like around 10.
Good.
Yeah, I've done 3 or 4 molars.
We had 2 gentlemen here yesterday that just graduated a year ago, and one graduated from dental school and done 0, and the other one had done 1.
Wow.
From Louisville.
Yeah, I think it was Colin Larson and Matthew Frei.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had the same name as you.
Interesting.
Yeah, except for they spell a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they spell a little different, but there's no difference. Did you know that?
Yes, I think a lot of the FREEs.
But the Mormon Church is very big into genealogy.
Yes.
And so I thought for the boys' Christmas present a couple of years, I'd go down to the Mormon temple and have them work out the family tree. And it was an incredibly fun experience. And there was all these volunteer retired ladies who they just worked it to the bone.
Oh,
and
I'm sure.
I mean, they were
salivating when you walked in.
But this is what they told me. They go that people come in here and they think it's a mathematical periodical table. He goes, that's not how it is. He goes, 1880, 80% of the planet can't read or write. So then these small towns start popping up. They all had one church, and that was on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And so they would use that for the school. And the minister would try to get them to do schoolings, and none of the men would give up any boy.
Because they need him to work.
They need him to work the farm. They need to eat. So the only thing they would give up was a small girl who wasn't big enough to break a horse, plow, fix a fence. So they sent these little bitty girls, probably 3-4 years old, and they only stayed there till they were big enough to where Dad could say, you can plow. And then they'd teach this little girl an alphabet, and they'd all this. She's the first person in the pedigree that went to school. What's your last name? Frei. Well, how do you spell it? Well, Frei, Free.
Yeah.
So when you've been doing genealogy like these ladies have over in Mesa for 10, 20 years, she said, all of a sudden your name pops up in Ohio, and it's in 7 different counties. And it's spelled 3 different ways.
Yeah, but they're all...
I guarantee you that's the same tribe. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's cool.
So you have to... And then the craziest one is when there's no translation from Islam to English or Russian. So when Muammar Gaddafi died, his obituary... They spelled his name different in the New York Times, the LA Times, Washington Post. Some spelled it Gaddafi with a K. Some was Gaddafi with a QU. And then people were saying, well, what's the right way to spell it? Well, in Arabic. But there's no translation tool from Arabic to English. It's art. So it's art and science. And dentistry is always going to be art and science because it's only science when we know. But when we know that there's things we don't know, then it starts being art. Mm-hmm. And since I doubt they will figure out the entire human body for another couple thousand years, there's a lot of art and science into dentistry.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you say the dental fraternity is best in the world. What's the dental fraternity, and why is it the best in the world?
I've heard you talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
You're joining the best fraternity in the world, and there's just something unique about the people in dentistry that they're so willing to welcome you and teach you. And just this weekend, I just sent you an email and said I'd love to meet you, and you invited me into your home to get on the podcast. Not many people would do that. And I've had I'm actually leaving today to go to San Antonio to Scott Luna's breakaway course there. And I've followed Joshua Austin. He's a dentist there and in San Antonio. Has done a lot of stuff with Dent Supply Serona and lectured, and I sent him a message on Facebook, said, hey, I'd love to just meet you for lunch, and he invited me to come to his practice and shadow him, and it's just an amazing group of people who are so willing to share their knowledge with you. So it's just something that I think is awesome and that everyone should take advantage of too. So
yeah, I do. It's what type of person wants to go to 8 years of college to do 100% hands-on surgery in an operatory on humans for the rest of their life? Mm-hmm. That's very different than someone who wants to be a lawyer. I mean, as bad as that sounds,
Yeah.
I mean, it just is. I mean, and remember that when we were talking about online continuing education earlier, because so many dentists are shy introverts, and they fly across the country and drop $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on these courses on implants and things. They could have walked across the street to the periodontist, the oral surgeon, and maybe what percent think in fear and scarcity? I don't know. I'm sure less people think in fear and scarcity in the South than they do in Manhattan and Brooklyn. I just had a really good gut feeling on that.
Quite
you know
a rat
what I mean?
race,
Because I've lectured in all those places, you know what I mean? And my gosh, I mean, you're flying over to Santa Barbara and all these deals to learn how to do a root canal, and there's a good old boy endodontist across the street who's a board certified endodontist, been doing it 20 years. You're just a baby that walked out of dental kindergarten. They all want a friend. They share your enthusiasm, your passion. You could go sit and be his dental assistant, any procedure, anywhere, anytime, and for no money.
Yeah.
And then what's really great is then you place that implant and you get into trouble someday. Well, he's your buddy.
Sure, yeah.
And your buddy fixes it. Whereas the buddy that you flew across the country and dropped $3,000 on, he doesn't even remember you were in his lecture.
Yeah, it's true. And then half the time you're at the lectures and you're sitting out in the hall on a phone call or something. So, yeah, it's true that I think that people forget that we're not competing with each other. You know, we're competing with people buying from a new car or buying from Amazon. We're not competing with each other, and so it's so important to use those resources to your advantage.
And the new car thing is hits a starting point, because the average new car in America is $30,000. 80%, 4 out of every 5 Americans at one time in their life, between birth and death, will buy a new car. And 5% of dentists will sell that average new car dental case once a week, 50 weeks a year, their whole career, and do $2 to $4 million a year. And the other 8 guys in the same medical dental building will never do that one time in their career.
So what separates the two then, in your opinion, and what makes
that the skill isn't any of the calculus and algebra and physics, and you have all this extra confidence because you got an A in calculus and you took Calc 2, or you tested out of Calc 1 and then took Calc 2 and Calc 3, and none of these skills matter. And the thing about statistics that are interesting is you really have to have a grasp of statistics, because say that there's a trait, say aggressiveness. You know, 60% of boys are aggressive by clinical psychologists. 40% of girls are aggressive. But see, that 60-40, that really doesn't describe the population, because what you have to do is go to standard deviation number 3. If you took 100 people and you said, well, who's the most aggressive person in this group? Now it's all boys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when you look at these, you know, when you say what is the average dental plan case? Well, according to Delta and the big deals, the average new patient is going to bill out about $381. The life value of that patient is going to stay in that dental office about 5 years. Where's my, so 6,500 divided by 381. The average orthodontist new patient for Invisalign is going to be about 6,500. The average value for an orthodontist is going to be 6,500, but he's going to capture that in 1 to 2 years. The average family for a general dentist is going to be about 6,500, but he's going to capture that over 5 to 7 years. Okay.
Yeah.
But when you look at that average case, it doesn't matter what the average is. What is the top 1%? What is the top 5%? And the top 1%, and a lot of times it's the top 5%, will just sell that average new car, because the other ones are going to look in there and say, well, what is your problem? Well, this teeth broke. So 1 tooth dentistry. And then it takes 4 or 5 years for you just to build and say, well, you know, since I'm going to numb up this whole quadrant, I might as well do this whole quadrant. Well, I don't want to know about both sides because then you might bite your tongue, even though you practice down the hall from an oral surgeon who numbs up all 4 quadrants, pulls all 4 wisdom teeth all day long for age 25 to 65.
Yeah.
So it's all these mental blocks. And 5%, somewhere between 1 and 5%, are doing this new car. And if you really want to see data, go to Care Credit, because Care Credit, the best thing Care Credit does, is forget about patient financing, which is their business. They can come in there and show you in your zip code all the dentists and what their average bill is. Because when they go in there, the first thing you're going to say is, "Well, you don't understand. I'm in a poor area, and they're poor, and they're big families, and all this." I had a dentist telling me this in Kansas last week with Ryan. I mean, it was unbelievable. And as he's telling me this, we're having lunch in this small town of 5,000, and you can see the 7-Eleven across the street. And as he's telling me all this abstract, I'm looking at the parking lot, I'm saying, okay, look, there's 9 cars in the parking lot, and 5 of them are F-150 pickup trucks.
Yeah.
Now just tell me, how much is an F-150 pickup truck? I said, aren't those about 60? And he goes, no, see that black one? That's fully decked out. That's like 98. And that other one over there, no way, that's under 85. So I'm like, okay, so 5 of the 9 cars are between $60,000 and $100,000 F-150 pickup trucks. And you've never sold one $30,000, I mean, what's a $30,000? A Ford Taurus? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you've never sold a Ford Taurus in 30 years of practicing dentistry, but some salesman has dropped 5 F-150 trucks. So people,
It's the mentality.
It's the mentality, but it's your self-limiting beliefs. I mean, it's just always your self-limiting. And these other guys that come in there and say, "Bill, what are you doing? How you doing? How's Morgan? How's the twins? When's that baby due?" And communicating and accessible and making you feel connected. And then say, "Okay, so here's the deal. Here's all your teeth. You got great teeth, man. That is awesome." I mean, you got to realize we're in America. By 65, 10% have 0 teeth. And by 75, 20% have 0 teeth. You got a lot of teeth. You want to reward them what good ideas they did. You know, you remove your wisdom teeth. You're doing so good. But here's all your cavities. Here's what we need to do. Here's the whole thing. My God, basically, there's only a couple of questions. I mean, half of America is afraid of the dentist and wants me to bring in a board-certified anesthesiologist to knock you out so you'll be asleep, you'll wake up, and all be done. The other half aren't afraid. And then the other half is when people go buy a Ford 150 pickup truck, they don't go in there and write a check for it. They finance. And Carol here ran your credit history, and to do every single thing you need, it'll be $331 a month for 60 months. So when do you want to do it? And they're like, well, I definitely want to be put to sleep. And I can definitely do $331 a month. And I don't know. How about next Friday? And they do that every week.
Yeah.
They do that every single week. And it's just, and you can't, and then in dental town, dentists are so funny. I love them to death. But you'll ask them, like, well, what courses do you want? They want more occlusion.
Yep.
They want more TMJ.
Sleep apnea.
Sleep apnea, yeah. It'll fix your hair loss and erectile dysfunction, and you'll never be fat again. And it's just, my gosh, really?
Yeah.
It's just.
That's part of the thing I mentioned earlier about not letting dental school get in the way of your education. It carries on even after dental school, too, that I think people need to realize that it's not. 'Cause some people I feel like are afraid to make money in dentistry because they feel like they're robbing their patients or something, But in reality, you're not doing anything they don't need. Like, they need these procedures. It's just a matter of, are you going to be the one to do them, or is someone else going to do them? So you really have to have confidence, like you said. I think it has to be a mindset that the procedure needs to be done, and you have the skill set to do it. So then it's just a matter of presenting it to the patient in a way where they're confident in your abilities and they're willing to accept it, and presenting it in a way that they feel like they can manage it financially too. So that's something you're just not taught in school. So.
And you don't you don't even need the skill set to do it. I mean, I cannot tell you. So let's say you have a dollar and you do $1 in sales. That's a 100% overhead. You still have your dollar asset, but now you do $2 in sales. Now your overhead went from 100% to 50%. And if you're doing $2 in sales on a $1 a month asset, or $2 a year in sales on a $1 a year in cost, you have a 200% return on asset. So instead of going out and learning how to place implants and dropping big money, flying around the country and getting implant kits and all that stuff, if you just sit there and say, well, who do I want to place implants on Morgan? Well, no one will do it across the street, but maybe, like I'm in Phoenix. I can get down to Tucson and get half the periodontists and oral surgeons to come down to Phoenix one day a month and place all my implants and split it with them 50-50. So now I have no implant inventory, just like anesthesiology. I don't want to learn an anesthesiology. I don't want to get advanced cardiac life support. I don't want to be in a witness stand someday and having a doctor, board, MD guy going over my emergency protocol and have an accent. So I can just bring in an anesthesiologist for everybody that delivers a baby. I mean, the doctor just spits out a text and they're sitting in the Waffle House. They're sitting at the IHOP. They're there in 5 minutes. As far as placing the implants, you don't even need the skill set. What you need is to be able to attract and retain quality key staff and attract and retain quality key customers.
Yeah.
And if those customers come in there and you say, well, you know what, this is a pretty complex case. We're going to have you come in and I'm going to bring in Charlie. He's going to put you to sleep. And he's with Ed, the oral surgeon. He's going to place the implant. You don't even need these skills. You don't need these skills. And one of the things that when you talk about sleep apnea, what really concerns me about sleep apnea is that in 1900, there were no specialties and healthcare wasn't 1% of GDP. By 2000, healthcare was 14% of GDP, and the MDs had 58 specialties, and the dentists had 9. Now healthcare is up to 17% of GDP. It's going from no specialties. Now we're at 58 and 9. What is that? 68. We're headed towards 100 specialties. So when you say I'm going to add sleep apnea, I'm like, dude, are you even good in molar endo? And so when you tell me you're going to add sleep apnea, my first question is, well, what are you going to take away? Oh, I'm going to master endo and perio and pedo and sleep apnea and Invisalign and occlusion and TM. It's like, so we're going back to 1900? So you're going to be that one guy? I mean, what are you going to do after that? Are you going to start doing ophthalmology and hearing? I mean, where does it stop?
Yeah, that's true.
So then you have another model where you sit there and say, you know what, I don't like molar endo, but I'm in a small town, and I'm going to get an endodontist from Phoenix to come up to Globe one day a month, and I'm going to stack up all my molars and do them all in one day, or vice versa. But the consumer. Like if you went to a hospital, you wouldn't want them to say, well, I got to send you over here to get an x-ray and 4 miles over here to fix your broken leg and 3 miles down here to get...
don't farm your patients out, but bring the specialists in.
Yeah, I think if I came out of school and I was a specialist, if you were an endodontist or any form of specialist and you came out of school right now and you had $400,000 in debt, really your best idea is to go buy a $500,000 office, then what's your next question to me? Well, how do you advertise and market to get these referrals? Shit, I would have walked down to LA and said, what are the 10 biggest practices in LA? I'm an endodontist. And then I would have got the 10 biggest ones that I'll do Monday morning in your office, Monday afternoon in your, you know what I mean? And and then split it 50-50. So now you have guaranteed 50% overhead and unlimited patients. And if you're showing up to the office, they don't have work, and another office is calling you to come in. So dentistry has a long history of not putting the patient first, but putting the dentist first. They have banker's hours. They send you to 9 different locations to get something done. In Phoenix, Arizona, where you drove up these streets of my house, if you would have wrecked your car, the ambulance would have been here, the fire truck would have been here, and they'd take you to a hospital fully staffed. But if you were just walking up the doorway and tripped and fell and knocked your front 2 teeth off, do you think right now, if you would have tripped at my front door and clipped 8 and 9, that we could have found you someone to fix you in a dental office?
Not today.
No,
Not
it's
a
impossible.
chance.
Not a chance.
Yeah.
So the customer's screwed. The customer, I can get a pizza delivered. A fireman and a policeman will come to my house. And when your Morgan drops that third baby, she can do it. She can do it on Easter, Christmas, Hanukkah. It doesn't matter. They're ready.
That's true, yeah.
But not dentistry. And then the killer sucker punch is 8% of emergency room visits are odontogenic in origin.
Yeah.
That's almost 1 in 10. In fact, if I was going to start another business model, that's another amazing business model. If I was a young graduate and I was $400,000 in bed, I'd go to the biggest hospital. You know, they say, well, you know, nobody needs a dentist in this town. It's too big and crowded. Yeah, I would go talk to the hospital administrator. I'd say, why don't you give me free rent in 1,500 square foot down the hall from that emergency room?
So like a dental urgent care?
Yeah, because when they want to deal with heart attacks and strokes and deliver babies and all this stuff, they don't want you tying up some room in there, and then we have to go in there and give you Vicodin and PenVK and then $1,500 of billings later you leave and we're still at square one. You're still just on PenVK and Vicodin. Mm-hmm. But to sit there and say, oh yeah, we got Dr. Bill Frei. Just go down that hall. If this is a tooth, we're done with triage.
Sure. So
go down the hall.
So what's the solution to that though? Like if you have a practice of your own, you're the only doctor in your practice, like you'll get so burnt out if you can't be open, 7 days a week, obviously, as a private practitioner. So what's the solution then? I mean, how do you?
Well, that's why you've seen a continual migration from solo to group in medicine. Medicine is a whole generation ahead of us. And there's a couple things that did that. One was the equipment. You know, when you buy ultrasound and a CAT scan and an MRI, it doesn't make sense for just Dr. Frei to use it.
Sure.
So as the equipment got more expensive, they had to do group. Mm-hmm. And then because of group, then they could shift around the hours, which helped the consumer. What's ironic and laughable in dentistry is the same boneheads telling you to buy a $100,000 CBCT and a $150,000 CAD CAM and a $100,000 laser are the ones all against corporate and group practice and all that stuff. Well, dude, you can't buy $500,000 worth of equipment for one guy. It doesn't even make any sense at all. Yeah. So if you're going to buy a $100,000 CBCT and you're going to buy a $150,000 CEREC machine from Dentsply Sirona and you're going to buy $85,000 to $135,000 laser like Lanap or hard tissue laser or whatever, well, you need to share it with 2 or 3 or 4 people. And the thing is there's no difference. I do think dentistry doesn't have to be 24 hours a day, because being a dentist for 30 years, you can wait till 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
But if you're going to have to wait till Monday and then not even know if they're going to get you in, you're going to go to the emergency room. Yeah. So I think if you were 7 to 7, so if you got with 3 guys, and that's another thing, what's wrong with a 12-hour day? In hospitals, if you graduate med school, they'd hire you and they'd say, hey, Dr. Frei, you're going to do a 24-hour shift on Monday and Thursday. That's it. That's what you do for us. No problem. Then you walk in dentistry. Dr. Frei, on Wednesdays we want you to stay till 7. What the hell? I'm married and have a family.
Yeah, it's true.
And so you could get literally do a 12-hour day on Monday, take off Tuesday, a 12-hour on Wednesday. Yeah. And then take off. You could whatever.
I think that's one reason why like a group practice model or having a partner is attractive to me, because you can serve your patients better because you can be open more. They have access to you in your office more, and then but you're not sacrificing your own personal health and mental health, and because you need to take time off, and you have someone to cover for you and cover those hours. So I think that, in my opinion, that model of just being a single doc and running it by yourself is going to become more and more difficult. Not that it all has to go the way of corporate, but I think involving other dentists in your practice, associates or partners, I think is just better for everyone.
Yeah, and the head economist at the American Dental Association, what's his name? Marco Vujicic. Marco Vujicic. I'll never get that name right. I'm linguistically retarded. The only D I got in my life was in Spanish. And of my 5 sisters, me and my brother, I'm the only one where the piano teacher fired me. She told my mom Howie couldn't carry a tune in a lunch pail. And San Martin, my Spanish teacher, told my mom I was linguistically retarded. So I apologize if I don't get the name right. But, you know, he used to work in the World Health Organization, the United Nations, all in healthcare statistics. And he shows just amazing data. It's all drifting from solo to group, all around the advanced world. And it's mainly because of the cost of equipment and being patient-centered. I mean, you know, if your twins fell down and busted off their front tooth, you aren't going to settle for, well, it's Thursday and we're open till Monday at 8.
Yeah, not a chance.
Not a chance. So what would you do? You pack up and go to the emergency room.
Yep.
And then they can't do anything. They can't do anything.
Medicate them and send them home.
Yeah. So they say, here's the pain pills, here's the antibiotics, this will do nothing, this is all voodoo, tinctures of time, and come back Monday. And then, the business models. So are you excited about joining, is it the Army?
Yeah, it's the Army. It's really a new experience. No one in my family served in the military, and so it's all new to me. So you couldn't get in the Marine Corps because Army stands for ain't ready for Marines yet? Oh, I don't know about that. Yeah, it's fun. I went to the nearest base to St. Louis to get my uniform to get ready to go to officer training, and just from being in dental school, I'm already a second lieutenant as far as rank goes. And you pull up to the base, and there's someone there to check your ID, and usually the person checking the ID is a lower rank. And so they saluted me, and I don't know anything yet about the military, so I just was like, oh, hello. Like I didn't know what to do, so it's all so new to me, and I guess that's why they sent us to.
Well, a college degree, you start as an officer.
Yes.
You're going to start as a doctor. Oh yeah, you're way down the line.
So it's interesting because I have no experience whatsoever in the military, but you're given a lot of responsibility right from when you start. But yeah, we're going out. I go to officer leadership course, and then we'll go out to Tacoma area to do the AEGD. So I'm looking forward to that. I think I'll get some good training there.
You know what? If you think the dental town, dentistry is a good fraternity. I think dental town is an amazing fraternity. The military dentist, that is to die for. But what I want to salute the military dentist for is when my boys were growing up. I had 4 boys, Eric, Greg, Ryan, and Zach, and anytime we were going to Disneyland or San Diego Zoo or Legoland or whatever, I would post on Dental Town, hey, I got my 4 boys and we're at this hotel and there's a big old military base and I can see aircraft carriers and Trident submarines. Any dentist on base that could give us a tour? Oh my God. I mean, so many dentists said nobody gets on here, it's especially after 9/11, which was 18 years ago. What year was that? 2001?
Yep.
So this is 17 years ago. And they said after 9/11 everything's changed, but their ranking was so high that meeting some short, fat, bald guy with 4 kids at the gate. I mean, he was everybody saluted him. I said, who outranks you on this aircraft carrier? And he was basically the top dog.
Yeah.
And then we went up and even visited him, and he let us sit on the steering wheel and drive the deal. I mean,
that's awesome.
It was amazing. I mean, we saw so many amazing submarines and aircraft carriers and bases. But I also, you could spot the passion. Because I never, ever, ever went on one of those places where the top dog, usually, I don't know, I know in the San Diego and the Marines, they met a 1-star general. Oh, wow. Trying to recruit all 4 of my boys. I mean, even they were like 2, 4, 6, 8.
Yeah.
And they were giving them this big old, do you remember any of these?
I remember going on those ships and everything, but I don't remember being recruited.
Oh my God, there was a general on in the San Diego Marine Corps area. And he literally spent a half an hour trying to sell the passion and oh my God!
I mean, especially if you're at that high of a rank, you've been in there for a while, and that's your life. You're passionate about it.
Yeah, you're gonna love the fraternity there.
Yeah,
that is one tight family.
Yeah.
So, are you or do you feel you're weak in a clinical area that you want to learn in your residency? I mean, are you sitting out the residency and say, we didn't get much of that at school, and I really want to learn that?
There's 2 things that kind of stick out to me. One is placement of implants, we place implants at the school, but the periodontist place them. You assist them. So if you have a patient that needs them, you schedule them with the periodontist, and they're the ones that place them. We don't have any residency programs at my school, so we get to experience everything, but that's kind of one thing that they just don't let us do is actually place the implant. So I'd love some training in that. And then I've extracted a ton of teeth at school, but not a lot of like impacted third molars, and so that's something I'd like some more training on too. I've done erupted third molars, but impacted wisdom teeth I think would be
the cash cow is extractions and endo.
Yeah.
How's your molar endo?
I feel good about it. Like I told you, I've done only 4 or 5 at school, but that's more than I think a lot of people get in school, and I enjoy endo, so that's definitely on the list as well as getting more experience doing endo. Nice.
And extraction is a harder skill than placement of implants.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. You got a lot of extraction skills.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you don't know where to learn extractions, again, go look in your newspaper. Where is Denture World? Where is Dental Universe? Where is every one of these metros has got some place that's Denture World, and they have these guys in there that have been chucking teeth and putting full arches in forever. And you go down there and you just say, and they'll actually hire you.
Yeah.
You could say, I'm gonna go down there every Saturday or take 1 day a week, and they'll probably pay you 25%. It might be a low fee schedule, but what's so cool about it is you got friends and colleagues in your backyard, and if you get stuck pulling out that tooth, you got a guy over there in the next operatory who's been extracting full mouth extractions and loading immediate dentures his whole life. I mean, it was amazing doing that back in the 80s where, they had dentures down to 3 steps back then. They didn't just got uppers, a mush bite. And these guys, you can sit there and say, well, that's low class sloppy. They didn't mount it on a semi-adjustable. Where's the Facebook transfer? Well, there's no Facebook transfer when you're selling a used car.
Yeah.
Then there's a Chevy, a Pontiac, an Olds, all the way to a Cadillac, a Mercedes-Benz. And you might say, well, I want to build a Lamborghini. Well, good luck with that, because America's the richest country in the world, and they only bought 300 of them last year.
Yeah.
But they bought 1 million Ford Tauruses, and I mean that literally, 1 million. And so get the extract. So the implants, and just a heads up on the implants, 20% have peri-implantitis at 5 years, and at 9 to 14 years, it's 60%. And there's a lot of people. I'm hearing this from many different areas and many different countries, and a lot of them that come on the show, that inert titanium isn't inert as you think it is. And it's causing inflammation, and that's a big part of it. And a lot of people are not seeing that on the ceramic implants. And then if you think, that's all hearsay, Howard, that's baloney, faloney, really, well, follow the money. Straumann, which is the largest implant company in the world as measured by sales and units, they just bought one of the largest ceramic implant companies.
Yeah.
So that's something you might want to start thinking about too.
Yeah.
So so where are you going to learn your business and practice management?
Well, I had a little bit of experience in undergraduate. I had a business management minor, so I got a little exposure to business marketing, and then just going to these courses, like I said, while I'm in school, listening to the podcast, going to the dentistry business conferences. So.
Now, where were you born and raised?
In Idaho Falls, Idaho.
And where was Morgan born and raised?
She was born in Clovis, New Mexico, and then her dad was in the Air Force, and so she lived in San Antonio. She lived in Italy. She lived lots of places. Most.
So does she want to be in? Where's her mom and dad live?
They live in near Seattle.
So does she want to? So what are you guys going to do after 4? You think what's the chance she'll stay in the military 20 years?
It's hard to say. Because like I said, no one in my family's been in the military, so I could get in there and love it and stay in long term. I know that I'd like to own my own practice and to do my own thing. So I guess time will just tell with that. I think if that's the case, that I do get out into private practice after my payback, then it's probably likely we'll end up back in Idaho somewhere. My family's there, and her family's thinking about moving to Idaho. So
I love Idaho.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. I love it there.
I want to figure out how I can live in Phoenix in the winter and Idaho in the summer.
Yeah.
Maybe we could have switch dental offices. You come down here when it's 110 and above.
I don't know about that.
For 4 or 5 months.
Man.
It's just so gorgeous.
Yeah, it's like one of the best kept secrets. There's everything you need outdoors.
And I'm Irish, so that's potato country. So that's the official mecca.
That's right, man.
Of all the Irish people.
I grew up on that stuff. So.
I think that's why they actually left Ireland for the famine. And when they came here, they stopped at Boston. They should have gone all the way to Idaho.
Going west.
That has all the potatoes. Well, I would say it seems to me like half the people I know that enter the military that say they're going to do it 4 years, half of them stay for 20. And then they open up a practice. It's just a great gig. If you're doing 4, you might fall in love with it. But a little premature, but let's say you're going to do 4 and leave.
Okay.
Would you buy a practice or would you start one from scratch?
That's the big question that I've actually thought about a lot, because obviously if I acquire a practice, there's immediate cash flow, and but at the same time, there's something about not inheriting someone else's staff, inheriting someone else's broken systems, and being able to implement all that stuff the way that you want it from the beginning. That's really attractive to me, and that's why I'm going to the startup course at Breakaway this weekend, is because it's really interesting to me. So
Scott Loon.
Yeah. Yep.
But I can tell you this. The fact that you're even thinking about all this stuff and you haven't got out of school. I've been watching guys like you graduate for 30 years, and guys like you who are serious, networking, thinking about it before graduation. Every single one of you guys crushed it.
Well, it's good to know. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think it's something I'm just passionate about, and I love dentistry. There's so many different avenues and ways to enjoy the field of dentistry. Doesn't have to be a job. It can be a great career for you. So it's something I love. So.
Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, I've loved it. Yeah, thank you so much.
And back to saving those rural guys, if you can find any information about what the Indian Public Health is dangling,
I'll get those numbers,
or getting to those numbers from your classmates, or tell your classmates supposed to, because there's a lot of guys in towns of 5,000 where he's the only guy in town. The saddest case I saw, I was lecturing in London, and there was a dentist there actually from an island. And this island had like 15,000 people on it, and he put up his practice for sale like 15 years ago. And I think there's about 15,000, because around the United Kingdom, there's lots of little bitty islands there. And nobody would buy his practice, but people, he closed down his practice, but they all knew he was the house next to it, so they'd knock on his door, and his wife would say, "Billy, go back there and unlock the office." And so he'd been practicing 10 years past what he wanted to do, and I tried to explain to him this thing called the internet and Dentaltown. Dentaltown has 6,500 free classified ads on it right now, and dentists need to, they need to dangle these incentives. And if all you had to do, and a lot of these guys are only making 2x of what their own hygienist is making.
Yeah.
So they're going into the Indian Public Health Service, say for $100,000. Their hygienist only making 50, but she can only do cleaning, exams, and fillings. These guys can do root canals, build-ups, and crowns. So it just makes so economic sense that if there's 168 hours in a week, but you're in this mindset that you can't get an associate to come out in Western Kansas, and it's the same thing. And I'll finish on one note. It was the same thing with the hygiene situation. So the dentists can't get hygienists to go to a town of 5,000. So I've been telling them for 30 years, what you do is on the high school, you have an essay contest, and why you want to be a hygienist. If you win the essay contest, you get free scholarship to hygiene school. So several dentists have done this over the years. I mean, dozens. And one guy called me one time and said, "I don't know what to do. 2 girls did the deal. Do you want to read that?" I said, "No, you need 2 hygienists. You need 2 full-time hygienists." But those girls didn't get accepted to hygiene school because they didn't have the A. You needed to have a 3.85. Again, filling up the whole class with girls from Wichita, Kansas, who are never going to drive 2 hours out into Western Kansas to have a job because the deans have no concept. So really that A in English, that's so important that there shouldn't be a hygienist in Western Kansas. Really?
Yeah.
So demographics matter.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming by.
Yeah, loved it. Thank you so much.
Best of luck. Thank you, Ryan, for working on the Greek Orthodox Easter.